Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, whenever you happen to be listening. I am so excited to welcome my guest today, Cheri Trites-Versluis. Hopefully I said that correctly.
Good.
Is the Director of Policy Analysis at RiskGenius, now part of Bold Penguin. This is exciting for me because I'm watching my universe continue to just evolve and expand very quickly as more and more people come into it and introduce me to more amazing women. So I was introduced to Cheri, I would say, by two recent guests, Kaylee Chapello and Sharon Fox, who were on the show and then invited me to a Women in Insurance happy hour. And here we all were sipping wine and talking about our careers. And Cheri is now a guest on the show today. So I'm so excited to get to talk to her today and share her story with all of you. So how are you doing today, Cheri?
Great. I'm super excited to be here and so happy that I met you.
Yeah,
Thank you for inviting me.
So it's such a fun hour, just sharing all of our different journeys into to where we are today. So I'm excited to dig into that right now, and some other things, and just kind of explore everything, all your insight that you have to share, because you've had such an interesting career. So this is going to be it's going to be new for me. I haven't interviewed somebody that does your type of work, so it's going to be exciting. I'm going to learn a lot, I think, today. But first of all, so you're in the heart of the Midwest as well. You're a Midwest girl, same as me. But are things pretty locked down? What's the situation? You have kids. What's that whole thing been like as we've been navigating a pandemic?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's probably not quite as locked down as other parts of the country. I feel like it's locked down just because I have two children. I have a 16-year-old who's a junior in high school and a 10-year-old who's in fifth grade. So we are all going a bit stir crazy. We love traveling. So this has been really difficult just because of the impact on travel. But I would say, Kansas City in particular is not terribly locked down. We can still go to restaurants. We're safe. We wear masks when we're going to stores. You wear masks until you're seated at the restaurant. But the 10-year-old is back in school full time. Nice. The high school student, they're doing a hybrid model, which in some ways is in most ways it's a nightmare right now. But I keep telling my son that he's acquiring new skills that he would not have acquired, such as organizational skills, knowing what days he needs to go to school, what classes he has on the days that he's going to school. So the bright side is that he's acquiring skills probably earlier than he would have. Skills that you often don't acquire until college, he's sort of having to acquire now.
Yeah, that whole time management aspect. My oldest is 14 and he's completely online. And so watching him think that at the beginning of the year, he was going to skate by on 4 hours a day. And now he's like, this is a full 8-hour day for me. I'm like, yeah, welcome to real life, buddy. So yeah, it's kind of funny to watch them figure all of that stuff out.
Yeah, I wonder how much it will impact some of their career path decisions.
Oh, yeah.
Because for sure, my son is I don't know how you sit at one desk all day. Because the same thing, the days he's home, he's at his desk in his room, all day on Zoom. And then he has homework, 3 to 4 hours of homework in the evenings. And he's just I'm never, ever having a desk job. He's that's one thing I've learned from this is that I will not sit at a desk. And it's
well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what, the world will be so much different in 10 years when he's really, solidified himself in a career. And so, yeah, it will be interesting just to see. Their perspective is going to be so much different than we could have even imagined. I mean, we knew Gen Z was going to be different. And I think both of our oldest would be Gen Zers. They'd be the end of Gen Z.
Yeah.
But I think the end of Gen Z is going to be so much different than the beginning of Gen Z. It's just going to be wildly, their experience is just going to be so different. So yeah, that will certainly be an interesting thing to watch evolve over time. Yeah. Have you had your first round of conferences yet?
Yes.
Yeah. That was interesting.
It was. Yeah. I had one teacher say, she was seriously, I've seen your son 8 times. I don't even know who the students are. because they're, half the class,
Yeah.
not every, it's like the first half of the alphabet is in class 2 days a week, and the second half of the alphabet is in 2 days a week. And they've only been doing that for a few weeks. So it's bizarre.
Yeah. And they're probably masked up. Are yours masked up at school? We're masked
Yeah,
up.
they're masked. Yeah. So they don't get to see their facial expressions. They don't really have a lot of interaction with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. And like when you look at them and these are like ages when they're like developing a lot of their social skills, like it's different in terms of how they're even going to understand what human interaction looks like. So
very much so.
yeah, there'll be so many studies, I'm sure.
Yeah. These poor children are going to be studied for the rest of their lives.
Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about the COVID experience at every age. So mine are 14, 10, and 7, and they all have adapted in very different ways, I feel like, in terms of, at one point, none of them wanted to go hybrid. They were like, no, just forget it. Like, I just want to do all one way or all another way. And so we've figured it out as best as we can at this point, but it feels like a new learning experience every Monday.
I agree.
You got to figure it all out again. Yeah. So, I mean, it's certainly all sorts of things to tackle on the home front. You're working from home?
No, I'm actually in the office.
You're in the office.
Yeah, there's usually only like 3 people in here.
Yeah.
But we'll probably get into this, but I worked remotely for 17 years and then changed careers pretty much completely. Still insurance, but different career. And so I really was enjoying coming into the office, and then with both children home for most of it and my husband mostly working from home, I just couldn't manage trying to learn how to do something new with everyone home and 2 dogs. So I enjoy coming to the office just to get out of the house.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. I now get out and drive. Like sometimes I just drive around or go get a coffee once a day just fresh air, exposure to the outside world, and all of those things. So yeah, absolutely understand. So since you mentioned career, we might as well hop in. I got to learn a little bit about your career during our happy hours. We were all kind of going around and giving a brief background of how we all came to be on that call together. But would love to get into that story a little bit more, where you started and how you ended up at RiskGenius.
Sure. Yeah. It's always interesting to hear how people end up in insurance, isn't it? Because I think there are very few people who grew up saying, I cannot wait for my insurance career to get started. Am
I 18 yet? I'm ready to get my license.
Right. Exactly. I graduated from undergrad with an English literature and a biology degree, which that's like too long of a story to go into as to how I ended up with like both sides of, the spectrum for degrees. But I then decided to go to law school, where still no interest in insurance whatsoever. I went to law school because I enjoy research and I enjoy writing. And then I graduated from law school with really no intention of going into litigation. However, my strengths were research and writing, and those are great skills in the litigation practice. So I ended up at a commercial litigation law firm in Chicago, and then was recruited into because of my research and writing skills, I was recruited into the insurance coverage and extra contractual litigation practice and the appellate group. So I did all insurance coverage and bad faith or extra contractual litigation for insurance carrier clients, and then appellate work on, the appeals team worked on anything. It didn't matter, what the topic was, but it was doing appellate briefs and appellate arguments. But I absolutely loved the insurance coverage litigation work. I didn't even know what it was before I went to the law firm. And when I heard I was being, that I was going to be part of that team, I think I had a look of like fear and disgust on my face, like, what? Insurance coverage? I want to do antitrust work. That was not at all what I wanted to do. But like I said, I absolutely loved it. I loved the analysis and it was like a contractual analysis, and I really liked working with the clients. They were really interesting, really smart people, a lot of women in insurance I found. And so I really enjoyed the opportunity to work with and learn from them.
Oh yeah.
That was how it started, was just at a law firm working in insurance coverage litigation.
Oh my gosh. Which is, I can only imagine like the amount of digging in, because I feel like I came from the agency side and you were digging into forms a lot, but like I can only imagine like how much you've dissected a policy form in your time. Like
yeah, at the most granular level, like arguing over the placement of a comma and how it changes the intent of the policy language. So yeah, it was, but like I said, I really enjoyed it. And then I did that for about 3.5 years, and one of the clients recruited me to come in-house, and it coincided with relocating to Kansas City. And so when they called and said, hey, would you like to come in-house? I was actually going to go to another litigation, or it wasn't even a litigation, just a very large law firm here in Kansas City. And then this client called and said, hey, we hear you're leaving. Would you like to come in-house? And they were located in Des Moines, Iowa. And I said, oh, that's really nice offer, but I'm not moving to Des Moines. I'm moving to Kansas City. And they said, you know what? We actually have 2 remote employees already. And this was 17.5 years ago now. This was to the beginning of 2003. And they said, we already have 2 remote employees and it's going really well. And we know your work, from me representing them in all of this litigation. So if you would be willing to join us, we'll let you work from Kansas City. And so I thought, oh, okay, I was going to have to sit for the Missouri bar and the Kansas bar. So I thought, wow, I won't have to sit for the bar exams. I can do this for a couple more years, at which point I would achieve reciprocity. And so then I could go back to a law firm, not sit for the bar exam, because I would just use my Illinois license to reciprocate into Kansas and Missouri. And that'll be it. I'll do this for a few years and it'll be a nice little reprieve from law firm life. And then I found myself there 17 years later. So that was how it happened. I went to work for a domestic property and casualty carrier in their in-house legal group, and eventually led the legal team, grew it from 2 attorneys to 10 attorneys, took on litigation management, created a liaison program with the underwriting team for reviewing all of the policy wordings. And then I was on the innovation committee, which is where I met Chris Cheatham, the co-founder of RiskGenius.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that's how you met Chris. I'm not actually sure how I know Chris. I think we're only connected on social media. I don't even know if I've met him in person, but he, like, fascinating work that RiskGenius is doing. I remember hearing about RiskGenius on a podcast and going, oh my God, like this, it's so important. Like this whole idea of really being able to make sure that you're providing equal coverage. Like it's something that we can boil it out in the price game and really end up doing a significant disservice, or it's just details that get missed along the way. And so yeah, I was always fascinated. It seemed like such an obvious thing that was needed in the industry. And then I was like, I mean, it always seems like it's that way. It's those obvious things that you're like, why didn't I think of that? But really building the intelligence behind it has been, I'm sure, a fascinating process for RiskGenius. So how long have you been at RiskGenius then?
I started February 17th. So I was only here for not even a month before the shutdown. And that was when I pretty much panicked, because they didn't bring me on to work, as an attorney, which was pretty much really all I knew how to do was, lead attorney, like work as an attorney, manage litigation, lead a group of attorneys. So that was a little bit of a shock to the system. Yeah. And, I was working with our analytics teams, and I recall Jeremy Smith, the president of RiskGenius, asking me a question, like, I don't know, 3 weeks into the job. And I responded with, I'm going to say a sequence of words, none of which I understand the meaning. I think they're in the right order, and I think it's responsive to your question.
taking a big gamble here.
Right. So, it was, but it's been great. I love learning. So it's been really, a privilege, I think, at this point in my career to have the opportunity to acquire completely new skill sets.
Did you feel any hesitation when you were, like those initial conversations with Chris about the opportunity with RiskGenius and then leaving what you'd known for 17 years? Like, what was that thought process like? Like, were you just like, I'm ready for something new? Or was it like, I'm not sure what this leap is going to feel like?
No, I had a lot of trepidation because I loved my job. I had built an amazing team. I mean, I don't know that I'll ever be able, I love my team here. It's fantastic. But the team that I was able to curate in my last job, I love that team. And they were so, yeah, I've always tried to hire people smarter than me and people who can collaborate really well and work really well together. And I achieved that with the team that I created. And so I absolutely loved them. So leaving that team and leaving what was really, I mean, the career I worked at was just outstanding and gave me so many opportunities and I had more opportunities ahead of me. And I knew that. So to leave that was a tremendously difficult decision. But I did it. The reason I did it was because I really felt like I had more to learn. Not that I didn't have more to learn there, I did, but in a lot of ways I was sort of maxed out on learning potential. I mean, I think we can all grow as leaders. Mm-hmm. So certainly I think from a leadership perspective, there was probably more opportunity to learn there. But as far as actually acquiring new skills and challenging myself, I felt like those opportunities were probably going to decrease. And I'm not super young, but I still have plenty of time left to work. And so I wanted to have the opportunity to keep acquiring new skills and really challenging myself and learning. And so that's what attracted me to RiskGenius. And I had seen the software and really believed in it and knew, at least from my perspective, that it did have the potential to completely transform the insurance industry. And so to be part of that was really an exciting opportunity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's something really special about the fact that you were so intentional in the way that you built that team that you knew you were leaving it in good hands. Like you had.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe not knowing what that future was going to be like, but also having that confidence in the team that you had pulled around you to really, make that department successful.
Yes. And I had the opportunity to hire an outstanding young woman from a law firm who was taking on a lot of my supervisory responsibilities just because I was having increasingly more responsibilities, from the top. Mm-hmm. And so I needed someone to sort of work in a supervisory capacity and sort of more of the day-to-day managerial responsibilities I had with the team. And I did that when I hired her. I had no intention of leaving. And that was about 6 months before I was given the opportunity at RiskGenius. So I did. I knew that, once she started and she hit the ground running and she exceeded my expectations. When I hired her, I knew she was a good hire, but then she was even better than I thought. So I knew that I was leaving the team in really good hands and that I was leaving my boss with, someone who could pick up a lot of what I was doing and could eventually pick up all I was doing over time. Once she was given the time to learn and acclimate, that she would be able to just run it like a sprint. So I felt good about that.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that I think sometimes gets missed, like, and maybe it's the difference between leadership and managing, I don't know, but like really making sure that you're helping your team harness those skills that they can take into their next career, whether it's taking over your position or, right, or something else, that next phase of their career, and just making sure that you're providing them with really good usable skills. And just, and I don't know what was it about her that really told you that she was a good hire? Was there something that just like jumped out and you're like, these are the qualities that you want in a hire?
well, this is going to sound really egotistical, but my boss, who also participated in the interview, she said, she is you on steroids. I was like, well, that is exactly what I've always said. If I could have two of me, it would be fantastic. So when she said she's you on steroids, I was like, well, then she's going to be perfect, because that's what I need. Is I need myself plus who has more energy.
Yeah.
No, but I think what I really liked about her was she's very direct. And I have always valued men and women who are very direct, where there's no question as to what the expectation is.
Right.
She was also very respectful of others' opinions, and she was interested in their opinions and viewpoints. And so those were really the qualities about her that I really enjoyed. And she's funny, and just like she's fun to be around, but also gets the job done, and she has very high expectations for herself and for others.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things, like, you just know it when you see it, and it's hard to like necessarily describe all of those qualities. But yeah, I do think that one of the things that can plague an organization is a leader that is ambiguous, right? Like, if there's that clarity isn't there, and when you see somebody that you're like, they are direct, they understand the importance of clarity and all of those kinds of things. And if you were leading with all of that, then that's setting people up for success.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So tell me more about your role at RiskGenius and how you felt like this is a good fit for me.
Yes, absolutely. So they needed someone, they didn't have any subject matter experts really on the team. So they needed someone who really understood policy language at a granular level and who could communicate effectively with the carriers and understand what the carriers' needs are, and then translate that really to like the product team. But also the analytics team. So, and that for me, that was that part, I was like, oh, I can do that. Like, I understand policy language. I understand carriers' needs. But then the challenging part is then collaborating with the analytics team and explaining and transferring all of that knowledge to the analytics team so that they can create algorithms and develop AI to analyze insurance policies. So that's been the part that has probably been like the most challenging for me, is understanding the needs of data science, analytics, and then also software development. I had no clue as to how software was developed before I joined RiskGenius. So that's, and now I'm also leading product development for RiskGenius, which is again, a new role, new skill sets, working in Jira and talking about Scrum Masters and things that I had exposure to on the, carrier side, because I had but I had the opportunity to work with those teams, but I wasn't in charge of it. I just did my job, and there were other people who managed all of the product development sprints and everything, and I was just one of the participants. So it's been really interesting to have that responsibility and really drive the actual development of the product. So
that is hyper technical.
It is. Yes.
Like, I don't know. I have no idea what a Scrum Master is.
I know, we used to laugh when I was in my last job, because we saw years ago, we saw a job posted for Scrum Master, and we're like, what is that? Everyone's clicking on the job link to read the description. But they basically drive the development team to stay on top of their sprint so that they achieve what they're supposed to within a prescribed period of time.
Oh, all right.
That's probably a horrible description, and anyone who's listening to this and is in product is like, oh my God, she's leading product, and that's how she described a Scrum Master.
It works for me. I appreciate that layman's term a definition of the term. So yes. Yeah. So that, it feels like it's like a natural shift, but also a lot of brand new stuff coming at you, probably on a daily basis.
Yes. Yes. There's usually at some point during each work day where I'm like, I don't know how to do this. and I have to call and seek help.
Yeah. So do you think, and I'm curious, do you feel like, was that hard to be like, I'm going to go into something now where I'm not going to understand a lot. I'm going to have to ask a lot of questions. Or do you feel like you're okay with asking for help? Because I think it can be tough. Some people are like, I don't want to raise my hand and say I don't know. And other people are like, no, I'm okay with this. I feel like this is part of the territory and what I signed up for.
Yes, I'm okay with it. I've actually always been okay with saying I don't understand something, because I've found, and I think it's probably, I'm going to say I probably haven't been always okay with that, but I've just learned over the course of my career, it's much better and you achieve better results if you're just honest and say, you know what, I don't understand how to do this, or I don't understand what your expectation is, than trying to either make assumptions or guess and be wrong.
Yeah.
Then you've wasted your time and other people's time as well. So if you're just, and I think I've been comfortable in this role saying I don't understand, because they knew when they hired me that I didn't know, that I wasn't, I was very upfront and said, here's the deal. Like, I went from undergrad to law school to a law firm to in-house counsel. And all along the way, I had an assistant. I was like, all I know how to do is open a Word document and type. Like, I literally never had to do anything else myself. I didn't even have to keep myself organized. Like, someone has always done that for me. So I was very, I was like, I learned how to make, some Excel tables a few years ago. I was like, but that's about it. And I did that by watching YouTube videos and, but I really am not technologically astute. And so you'll have to be patient.
Oh, yeah. But to have the policy knowledge that you have, like, that's amazing. Gosh, I think about all the times that I like dissected additional insured forms.
Oh my gosh. Additional
insured versions. And I'd be like, what's the problem now? And they, like the carrier comes out with like their blurb. So did you write those blurbs? Like when they were like, this is what you should look out for in terms of like, this is the change from this year's version to, this current version of an additional insured form on a GL policy. And so I would be like reading that, and I'd be reading the forms, and we'd put them side by side, and we would, so it was like we were doing some very manual, just looking at stuff, knowing like if we had 100 contractors that were impacted by this, like we needed to make sure that they were very clear on how this was going to impact, their work or contracts that they had outstanding and things like that. So did you write up those summaries, or was it somebody else? Was that part of like your department's scope?
It would depend. So those tended to be a little bit more like marketing material.
Yeah.
Some of the brochures and pamphlets that were sent out explaining the changes. And I was regularly called upon to review those for accuracy. But we were really more involved in the actual policy language, like working with underwriting or product development to explain why you should or shouldn't use arising out of, or ongoing operations, or, whatever the terminology might be. Like, what are the consequences of choosing that particular phrase or those particular words? How is case law, how have the different jurisdictions interpreted it? Are you broadening it, narrowing it? Like, what are the consequences of the language that has been chosen?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's fascinating to me. I don't know. I feel like I haven't read a policy form in a while, but part of me is like, I maybe would. It's funny. Like, now that I say that, there was a guy that I worked with, and he would be like, well, sometimes I like read policy forms on the weekends. Like, seriously.
Wow.
And we, it would be like, oh my God, we'd always be like, nerd alert.
Yeah.
But it was like, we were all secretly like doing this on occasion, just maybe not on the weekends, but it was like, it's more of like bedtime reading than anything else for me, I think. But so you've had this fascinating, all these different experiences bringing you to this policy analysis and product development at RiskGenius now. But if you look back at this time in your career, or even like leading up to it, what's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned along the way?
To never say never.
Mm.
Yes, like just really to never say that you will never do something. And then the second one is to not be afraid of failure. I think when I started my career, I was so afraid of failing at anything that I didn't push the envelope or take any risks. Um, and I've learned over the course of my career that that's not really a very practical or effective way to grow in a career.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's hard. You feel like failure is going to be career ending.
Right.
But and there's probably some lines of work where maybe that's true, but
Right.
it does keep you playing small for sure. If that's your overriding concern when you get up and go to work every day,
Right.
for
Yeah.
sure.
And I think just even being afraid to, step outside of your comfort zone with your career and take risks because you might fail if you do something that's a little bit different or a little bit more challenging. Not even just tasks, but taking risks with your career itself.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, and I'm sure you've had so many people along the way. I remember as you were sharing stories during our happy hour, there were a couple of people that you alluded to, obviously no specifics really, but who's made a significant impact on your journey?
In my career, definitely my direct boss in my last job made an incredible impact on me. She she really throughout my career has served a couple of different roles. I would say first as mentor. When I first joined, she was just very kind, and she wasn't on the team I was on. She was in a different role at the time, but just really, providing me insight and support and offering me advice when it was solicited was really beneficial. But then what she did, which I think is really important for all leaders, is that she transitioned from a mentor to a sponsor, where she was really trying, she did everything she could to elevate me and collaborate with me and gave me every opportunity, regardless of whether, and supported me, regardless of whether it meant that we would continue to work together directly or not. And really without any regard as to how it would impact her professionally. She was just outstanding. And
Yeah.
well, she still is. She's still there and she's still outstanding. And I still talk to her on a weekly basis because she just gives me the best advice.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting separation there because I've really never thought about that transition from mentor to sponsor and like what that means. But I think, yeah, now that you say that, I mean, it's just it's a different role. And it's almost like as your career evolved, her role in terms of how she could support you was different. And she just went along right with it, right? She was along for the ride.
Yeah, she was. And when, we both sort of independently had some ideas several years ago at a point where there was some transformation going on within our business unit. And she was like, I think we could do this together and we would be great. Are you in or are you out? And I was like, if it's you, I am 100% in. Like, I'll go with you to the moon because I just really trusted her leadership. And so I'm very thankful for my relationship with her. And I think it's so important for women to support women.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, you've had such an interesting career. Like I just like I look at it and like just the word litigation, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I get a little nervous, a little just from the word. I'm like, oh my god, it just sounds like super intimidating. And I don't think I've spent like more than a few minutes in a courtroom ever, but I just imagine like everything from TV that I've ever seen. I'm like, oh, it must be really intense. And but it's just a different part of the industry that I honestly I don't think before I even met you a couple of weeks ago that I even thought about it existing within the insurance space.
Mhm.
But you've had this wonderful female mentor. You've taken some big steps in your career now, making that transition a few months ago. But how do we get more women to take steps like that, to just, whatever, if it's moving into leadership or just taking that next step in their career into something that feels a little bit risky, but something that they're interested in? Like, how do we encourage that within the space?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I think a lot of it goes back to confidence, confidence in ourselves. I'm always reminded of a story where, I had a couple of team members I had a lot of team members, but, both genders. And whenever we would have opportunities either for advancement or for working on a really significant project, and people would display some level of interest, once you would talk to them, what I found with women is that women always focused on their weaknesses or what their shortcomings were, despite how qualified they were for the position or role that they were, somewhat interested in. When you would interview them and talk to them and ask them, like, what about this skill set, or, describe your experience in this area, they would always without fail, focused on what they needed to learn and what they would need to do better to succeed. Whereas men consistently, regardless of whether they possess the skill set or the experience necessary, they always said they had it. And I would know, I knew because I was, the leader of that team, like what skills they did possess and what experience they possessed, whether they did or not. And so that was always really fascinating to me, that women value them, like their own experience and skills, less than men do. And so I think in order for us to achieve, more leadership roles, we have to really believe in ourselves more and have a higher level of confidence, and really do what I think men do: fake it till we make it. We're not very good at that.
No.
We want to fake it. We don't want to do it unless we can do it correctly and 100%.
Yeah. And I've read these studies. I mentioned this on my interview with Kaylee, but I read the book, That's What She Said by Joanne Littman, which was just fascinating. And, I loved all of the studies that she had done, but it was just like, there is this weird, like, self-deprecating conversation that we start on, like, the humble path is going to be the better path here. And I remember somebody like saying to me once in a conversation, they're like, you have to quit downplaying everything that you do. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Was I? And they're like, yes, like consistently for the last 20 minutes, you've just been downplaying everything and not realizing the impact that it was having on other people around me in terms of the way that they viewed me. But also I wasn't even valuing my own work.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I think it's really important, as, we're mentoring and sponsoring younger women, to help them achieve the confidence to not be self-deprecating and to not, focus on their weaknesses, like just like focus on your strengths. And if you can do 60, someone's saying, tell me about your experience here, and you have 60% of the 100% that you think is necessary, just focus on the 60% and pretend like it's 100. Like there's no reason to focus on the 40% that you're lacking. And that's what we tend to do.
Yeah.
And then also, I have observed some level of like, it seems like when women get to a certain point, and this might be based on my own personal experience, I don't know what it's like across all industries, but it does seem like once you have some women at the top, it's like there's this feeling that they don't want too many there.
Yeah.
So there does seem to be a tendency to be like, oh, I don't know if she's ready yet. I don't know if she has the experience yet. Whereas men don't do that. And it's almost as if there's this fear of, we've worked so hard to achieve this, that we don't want someone to come in and screw it up.
Yeah.
And I think we need to move away from that. Like, men screw it up all the time. Like, they're always promoted prematurely.
Yeah.
And they screw it up, but no one views it as screwing up. So why not, let's promote the person regardless of gender who's ready for that next step, and then support them and make sure that, and give them the skill set and the tools and everything that they can to succeed. And I think that as women, we need to do a better job of that with the women who are working now and who are younger but need to be promoted, because a lot of times you don't have the opportunity to acquire the skill set until you've already received the promotion.
Yeah.
Just do it and support them and sponsor them and give them the tools that they need to succeed.
Yeah. And I think I've noticed that too, in terms of it's like I had to work so hard for this. I don't know if you worked it. It's like it is like this weird like catch-22 that we drop ourselves into. But I do like, and I think you're probably seeing this too, the tide shifting to a more positive reception, I guess, in terms of how women are welcoming other women into the space. But there was a time where it was like, there's like this role, and then there's the hyper exec, like that super ambitious woman that made it into this C-suite position. And so there was like, the divide was just so huge that to see somebody like continue on that path, it was just so rare that it was like, when you were up here, you didn't even know how to respond to it. Like it was just such a unusual circumstance that that women were finding themselves in. So yeah, but I think it's getting better, and I see like that community just getting stronger. I mean, we were all together on a, on this happy hour, sharing our stories and our experiences. And I think like that level of transparency only helps.
Right. I agree 100%. And I always try to remind myself, because I've worked so hard, and I've had to sit in meetings, where I've asked for a salary increase, and I've, prepared presentations to demonstrate the return on the investment. Like, if you do this, here's the ROI.
Yeah.
So this is why you should do it. And there is, and it is difficult, because you have to remind yourself, like, I don't want this, young woman who's coming up, she shouldn't have to do that, because I should have never had to do it.
Right.
And so we need to change our mindset from, well, I had to do that, so you should have to do it, because you'll be better for it. We need to change from that and transition to, I should have never had to do that. Yeah. And so she should never have to do that. And that's when we are moving forward and supporting other women, and is when they don't have to do the things that we had to do to achieve, middle management level positions, with the unicorn getting the C-suite level. Because still today in most organizations, there's a void of female leadership at the executive level.
Yeah.
For no reason other than an unconscious bias or conscious.
Yeah. And there's, and I think it's like the analogy that just came to my head is like, we didn't blaze the trail, or nobody blazed the trail so that like the weeds could grow back over it behind us. Like,
right.
And so when that happens, it's unfortunate, but we have to keep that path clear for sure. So
yes.
Yeah. I love it. So if you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice at any point, I used to say like age 25, but I would say at any point, what advice would you give yourself?
I think to have more confidence.
Yeah.
Myself. Definitely.
Yeah. It's hard. I don't know. Yeah. Do you have boys or girls?
I have my 16-year-old is a boy and my 10-year-old is a girl.
Okay.
She has way more confidence than he does. so I'm succeeding at home.
Yes. And that's what I always like. That's what I look at now as a mom, is I'm just like, I want my daughter to grow up with that confidence and that. And I know that something's going to come along and it's going to like, definitely poke holes in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like building it from the base is like, that's just making sure she has a healthy foundation and like understanding who she is. And it does seem different to me, but I just had this conversation with somebody this morning. Like, I just don't want anybody to ever tell her who she is. And she's pretty, I just think she came out bold. Like, she was born bold, so much bolder than I was. So
with my daughter, and I don't know, maybe they won't have the holes poked in their confidence level that we experienced. I hope that by the time, I don't know if your daughter is the 10 or the 7-year-old, but
she's 7.
She's 7. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So hopefully by the time they are entering, the workforce, it is different. And there's no reason for them to have any different level of confidence than any other human being would have who has had similar life experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, it was funny. I had this conversation with my kids. Oh my gosh, I think it was probably a year ago, but I asked them why they think that men make more money than women doing the same job. And my daughter said, because men are stronger. And my oldest said, he's like, is that what happens? I don't know. Like, he was just like completely. And then my 10-year-old, my middle son is just like, I don't know. It's just, I think it's a broken system. And I was like, well, thank you. I'm glad somebody's been listening to mom spout on about this stuff forever and ever. But yeah, so just helping her recognize what all of that means has been, it's interesting because I'm hoping she's absorbing some of it, like some of it sinking in as we have these conversations.
I think so. I mean, I've certainly shared a lot of my experiences with, my family just at the dinner table, really just like, oh, this happened and I had to. And I shared a story, which I thought was really good for both of them to hear, and I'll share it here. You can decide whether you should take it out. I was in a meeting. It was a manager's meeting. It was a budgeting meeting. And one of the VP level person said during budgeting, when we were talking about salary increases, what do you do if, and he said someone's name, so he identified them specifically, and it was a man, if they're maxed out on the pay scale. I'm sitting in the meeting and obviously I know this employee, know who it is, know what job grade level it is, know my own job grade level, know that they have significantly less education and experience than me, and immediately can compute that he's being paid more than me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I couldn't even help myself. I immediately just said, well, that statement's going to be problematic for everyone. And of course it was the VP who made the statement was a male, didn't even think about the consequences of the statement. Yeah. But, I immediately called and said, this is going to have to be addressed. Like, this is absurd. Like, I should have never known how much someone was making, but now I do.
Yeah.
And there's a complete inequity here. Yeah. And you have to address this. And they did, but it was painful for me and it was uncomfortable. And I didn't like having that conversation. But I shared it with my family because that's what we do is we share. And so both of my children heard that. And, I felt like I wanted to share it because for two reasons. One, I wanted them both to realize that this inequity really does, it's not just something you hear about, like it truly is pervasive and it does exist.
Yeah.
And second, I also wanted them to know that I stood up for myself. Mm-hmm. I recognized that it affected me and that I was going to address it rather than, I had two options. I could have just complained internally. I could have complained to my boss who didn't know, she didn't know about this. And I went above her because she had no idea that this was happening. She was impacted as well. I mean, so I, went as high as I could go and just dealt with it directly because I didn't want to just be angry and complain about it.
Right.
I wanted them to know that, their mom recognized this inequity. And then I made sure on my team that it was all I could really do. I mean, I could advocate for myself, which was really important.
Yep.
Then I could make sure that there was equitable compensation within my own team.
Yeah. It is so pervasive. And so I think, wow. I mean, but knowing what to do, I think sometimes you don't know what to do. And it's been highlighted for me in the past. And they're like, you know that this is what's going on, right? Like you yourself are, in that situation. And I'm like, well, what am I, I didn't feel like I knew what the options were. And so really making sure that the next, I don't even want to say the next generation, the women that are in the workforce right now trying to figure this stuff out. Like they have the vocabulary and the knowledge that they need to really address the situation. It can be incredibly intimidating. I'm sure it was like, yeah, just
It's awful. I mean, because you don't know. I mean, obviously they're not supposed to retaliate against you, right? I mean, that's illegal, but still you don't know what the consequences are. Just even the perception of you moving forward by, executives, because you brought this to their attention, and, and because you're a woman, is it still seen as being, whiny or complaining? And so it's really, it was difficult because of the perception, and I was angry that I even had to address it in the first place. So yeah, it is really difficult because you do worry about the consequences.
Yeah, definitely. No, but I think helping women like figure out that advocacy is like, it's huge. It's so tremendous. I haven't gotten through the whole McKinsey study from 2020 yet. But I always have to like take it in doses, because there's some uplifting news, but there's certainly just a long road ahead in terms of really getting the female workforce where they deserve to be.
Yes.
So yeah, it's such an interesting journey that we're on, but I think it's obviously it's the right fight to be in, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, well, it's oh my gosh, that's like powerhouse stuff coming at you. So as we wrap up here, though, I have a couple of questions. So what does the future hold for you?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, we were, as you mentioned at the beginning, we were recently acquired, or RiskGenius was recently acquired by Bold Penguin. So that's super exciting. We're now part of a larger organization who has a different customer base, but our customers overlap. So it's super exciting to think about the potential for our software and the development moving forward. But beyond that, I don't know. I'm just here to learn as much as possible and enjoy the journey and see what sort of innovation. I mean, I love innovation. I love technology, and I'm excited to be part of it and to be part of this industry. And really, I'm super excited to meet more women in InsurTech, because it was such a privilege to meet you. And it's really a very small community. And I think that if we connect and support one another, that we can really have a tremendous impact in InsurTech. And I'm really excited to be part of that. I'm probably more excited. I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm probably more excited about that potential than my actual job.
Yeah, well, but I mean, it's all part of it. You wouldn't even, it's like before this, like I didn't even realize that there was such a rarity of women in InsurTech. Like,
Yeah.
And then I was like, the exposure, like I knew what it was like from the agency side. Like I get all that. I know what that situation is. I think there's more women working in agencies, but I still got the whole pay scale thing to deal with within the agency side. But then to come over here and realize, that same, male dominated industry reputation carries over into InsurTech. And so, but I mean, there's so much power in the connections that we're making. And I think, I don't know, like, thank God for technology, because otherwise we wouldn't know each other existed.
Right. And maybe, but for COVID, we might not have made these connections, honestly. So if there's a silver lining there.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I have seen that play out over and over. And so I'm trying to be mindful of that, even as I get a little impatient with other things with COVID, but certainly some good things and experiences that I've gotten to have because of it. So now my final question, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So if you got to play DJ for 5 minutes and you get to pick any song for everybody to listen to, what song are you going to pick?
Okay, this is the first thing on my mind, because I just watched the YouTube performance over the weekend and I was blown away. And it was Miley Cyrus's version of Just Breathe by Pearl Jam.
Oh, I'm going to have to check this out.
I mean, it's not like, it's just good. I'm kind of obsessed with her right now. I was never a Miley Cyrus fan, but I feel like in the last couple of years, she's really come into her own, and I kind of like her 80s vibe she has going right now. And this Pearl Jam, Just Breathe is, to me, it was fun. I'm a big Pearl Jam fan anyway. So but it's phenomenal, I think.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to listen to it. I've now collected so many great songs from everybody. I'm like, gosh, I do try and catch up on them like as soon as like I get done recording so that I don't forget, but I do have to make a playlist for everybody. The Schmidt podcast guest playlist.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, this has been amazing. I'm so excited that Kaylee and Sharon connected us, and I know that our paths are going to continue to intersect, and we're going to support one another and learn from one another, and we're only going to continue growing that group of women in InsurTech. And so I'm excited to see that group expand, and that we're gonna be in this together. It's going to be fun to transform this industry together.
Good. Well, I'm so thrilled to be part of it, and I can't wait.
Yes.
And thank you so much for having me today.
Yes. Well, thank you for your time. This has been amazing. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I don't know, I'll see you on the next happy hour.
Okay. Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, Cheri. Bye-bye.